Hey everybody, it's Michelle Janicki. I am finally getting started with the solder comparison. I know the angle of the camera for the live stream is not amazing. However, I'll be sure to show everything as close up as I can. And I'll take lots of pictures afterwards too. So, just to get started, I just have some window glass that I foiled, and they're about 2¼ inch by 3/4 inch, and I used Edco foil, if you care about the foil that I used. The flux that I'm going to be using is Fluxomatic. It's something I've been using for probably 15 going on 20 years. I really like it. But I'm going to try other fluxes, so if you've got a favorite flux, be sure to let me know, and I'll do a flux comparison too at some point, because that just sounds like fun to me. So I have rolls of solder for most things. There were some very generous folks in both of the Facebook stained glass groups that I'm in who sent me samples, and those samples, if I don't have a roll of them, look like this, and I've got them all labeled on the bottom so I know exactly what's what. But if someone sent me a donated sample that I happen to have a roll of, I'm using the roll instead, just for ease, for my own personal ease. I've had my iron warming up for a couple of minutes now. I just put a brand new tip on it. My iron is a Weller 100, and I've had it for probably 10 years, and it's been very good to me. The tip that I'm using is a 3/16 inch tip. That's my preferred size to work in. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. I'm starting with the lead-free solder. I've never actually used lead-free, so this is going to be a new experience for me. I know there are a lot of great applications for lead-free, especially for jewelry, because you don't necessarily want lead touching the skin for something that's, going to be worn a lot potentially. So I'm just fluxing each of the seams, and I've got each piece of glass labeled with the type of solder that it is, and I've got them in alphabetical order because I'm that kind of person. And we're going to get started. The first one I'm going to use is Amerway Emerald. Amerway is kind of cute. They name all of their solders on for different gemstones. So I'm going to go ahead and see about... It melts pretty nicely. It's not flowing as nice as I'd like it to. However, that's what going over it a second time is for. So I'm just trying to get the smoothest bead that I can on here without too much fussing. And I'm also making sure to wipe off the tip after every pass so I don't cross-contaminate too much. It's pretty much going to be impossible to have no cross-contamination whatsoever. This one is the Amerway Ruby. This one has silver in it. I'm not sure of the alloy in the emerald, but this one has silver in it, so in theory it should be a lot shinier than the emerald is. And if you happen to have any questions or comments while we're doing the live stream, I've got my sister from another gene pool here navigating the laptop so she can read out some questions and comments so I can address those on the fly. Alright, so that one, it's actually not very shiny. It looks like it crystallized a little bit. It's a neat look, but I wouldn't want it if I wanted to do something super shiny. This one is Amerway Tourmaline, and it says in parentheses above Tourmaline, highest sheen. So let's find out about that. See how this one melts. And this one's pretty smooth. I'm actually kind of impressed with how the lead-free solders are behaving. I guess I was expecting them to be kind of terrible, because I'm used to 60/40. So, and I have a little bit too much solder on here, and that is really shiny. That is nice and shiny. And that's set up pretty quick too. Then we've got a donated sample, Canfield DGS. I'm not sure what the DGS stands for, but we will see how this one. Canfield is a brand that I've used their 6040 a lot over the years, and I do quite like it. And it's catching on the foil as I solder, so I'm going to try to scoot that back in place. I should have put a second bar down to keep my glass in place. So that one also, when it's set up, has that sort of crystalline sheen on it. It's pretty, but not for that super smooth look, if you want that. This one is the Canfield Diamond lead-free solder. So, with a name like Diamond, I'm expecting something amazing. Ooh, it melts really nice. Ooh. Super smooth, super liquidy as soon as the iron hit it. That's really nice. Let's see how it sets up. It's got a little bit of the crystalline thing happening, but it's a pretty decent finish. Again, since I haven't worked with Canfield the lead-free very much, I don't know if there is a way to sort of smooth out that crystalline finish. I don't know if you guys can see that in the video at all. So let's see, another Canfield. They make a lot of lead-free solders. This one is the Pewter finish, Canfield. So this one melts really nicely too. Goes nice and liquid as soon as that iron hits it. So, get rid of that little blob. And that also has that sort of satin finish that a couple of the others have. So I could really see the satin finish being beautiful in jewelry and some decorative soldering as well. Oh wait, this is not the next one. I need Canfield Silvergleem, which is a donated piece. Here it is. So this one's Canfield Silvergleem. I never knew there were so many solders until I started thinking about this project really seriously, and it's so cool that I'm kind of getting my hands on all these different solders. I did buy a majority of these just so I could get the widest variety possible. I'm a bit anal retentive that way. I want all of the things obsessive, that's what it would be. So the Canfield Silvergleam flowed pretty nicely, but it's got kind of an uneven finish when it's set up. So I don't know how I feel about that one. So far the best finish, and by best I mean the shiniest, smoothest looking finish I've seen so far, is the Amerway Tourmaline. Now we're going to try the Quick Flow 3. This is by Eagle, and I know a lot of folks in both of the stained glass groups, Stained Glass Hobbyists and Stained Glass Addicts, really like Eagle, and this is my first time soldering with any Eagle brand solders. I did buy one of each of everything that they had, so I'll be really interested to try, especially the 6040, since that's my personal favorite to work with on my stained glass pieces. That one flowed pretty nicely. It was a little pasty, like some of the other ones. Didn't really go super liquidy, and it's got an okay finish. A little satiny, a little uneven. And this is the Quick Flow Silver, and this one also has silver in the alloy. So this is tin CU. I can't remember what CU is off the top of my head. And silver. Can you look up what CU is on the periodic table? Because now it's going to drive me nuts.
What is what?
CU? I know it's not copper. That's about all I know. This one's really pasty. Alright, let me get some more flux on there. Maybe I missed that seam.
It is copper.
It is copper?
It is copper.
I don't know why I thought copper was something else. I need more caffeine.
Copper is the chemical element symbol Cu. Atomic number 29. In case you were wondering.
Excellent. Excellent. I like the science. The science makes me happy. So the Quick Flow Silver, it flows a lot better when you flux. I totally missed that seam. And it's got a really even satin finish on it. That's kind of really pretty. Then we've got the Hot Max. And I don't know what the alloy is in this one. It says 95/5. I'm guessing tin and something else. That's just a pure guess because they don't actually have any information on here what the alloy is. So let's give this one a try. This is flowing pretty nicely. It's a little lumpy. Do a second pass and see if that clears up a little bit. That's pretty good. It's kind of lumpy. It stays fairly pasty. It doesn't get very liquidy when you solder it. And if you're not familiar with the Weller irons and the Weller tips, all the temperature control is built in. Weller actually strongly recommends that you do not use a rheostat with their irons because it is all built in, and the irons are not built to have their, I guess the rheostats manage amperage, so it controls the amount of electricity that the irons are getting, so they heat up less or more depending on what you need to do. So their irons are not built for that, and the tip stays at a pretty consistent, I think it's a 700 degree tip. Now the Mastercraft, oh I forgot to say, this is the Mastercraft solder that I'm working with now, and that flowed pretty nicely and it's staying pretty shiny, so I'm pretty impressed with that. It wasn't very pasty. So next one is New York Solder. This was another donation. Thank you very much everyone, by the way, that donated solders to me. There were a lot of brands that folks sent me that I had never heard of before, like New York. Never heard of that. And there were products that familiar brands like Canfield, I didn't know that they made lead-free solders because I'd never really needed lead-free solders before. It looks like that needs a little bit more flux because it's really lumpy and pasty. So let's try that again. So once I'm done trying out each of the different types of solders, I'll take a short break and I'm going to take these to the kitchen and wash them off and kind of show them off so you can see close up, hopefully a little more close up, the different finishes on here. But I'm going to go through the 50/50, 60/40, and 63/37 solders before we do that. This one is the Studio Pro lead-free solder. I think, I'm not 100% certain, but I think this is the brand that Hobby Lobby carries. I know I did pick up some solder there once when I was passing through. Happened to be a Hobby Lobby, and I am a sucker for any kind of art store. So, art supply anyway.
That might be a problem.
What, me being a sucker for art supplies? Yeah, I spend too much money, whatever. I'm okay with that. I am okay with that. So this needed more flux, so I just added that because it was looking really nasty. And that was me, not the solder. So the Studio Pro flows pretty nicely. It's a little on the pastier side. And there is a weird blob of finish, like satin finish in there, but that's, I'm guessing, more me than the solder, because the rest of it is pretty shiny. Okay, so our last lead-free is VWM. That stands for Victory White Metal. I know that they are an American company, and all of their solders are produced in the States, so I'm a fan of that. I am in America for those that are overseas. We're in the States here, and all of the solders that I'm using are solders that I was easily able to source in the United States. So there may be variations on what's available, like in the UK or in Australia, other places overseas. I don't know. I know we favor the wire form, the spools of solder. We don't really see a lot of bar or brick solders here in the States. That's just, I don't know. Ooh, I should have put a little bit of frame on that. So here is all of the, try to do the slimy show off here. I don't know if you guys can see all of that stuff, but here's all of the solders for the lead-free. And some of these performed a lot better than I was expecting for lead-free. I don't know, I guess I expected lead-free to be kind of horrible and pasty and sad and make me want to cry. But just before cleaning, it looks like the two shiniest are Mastercraft and Amerway Tourmaline. Those are pretty darn shiny. So I'm just going to set that aside very gently. And we're going to start with the 50-50 now. So I'm just going to pull these down here and get them in alphabetical order for you guys. So do you guys have any questions, comments that maybe I can address while we're getting this set up? See anything over there? No. You guys are awful quiet. Alright. So I just wiped off my tip, and I'm going to go ahead and flux hopefully all of these seams now and not miss any of them. And I'm being a little generous with my flux. It's a gel flux, so it doesn't really spit that much unless you get soupy amounts of flux on there. And that's, I've done that before. It's not great. So our first 50-50 is Amerway Onyx. This is another generous donation from a fellow stained glass crafter. So I'm just going to run that down. That runs pretty smooth. I don't know why I'm holding it like this. That's kind of crazy talk. Smooth that up a little bit since it was dragging the glass with it. So it sets up pretty quick. And that's doing a little bit of the sheen, the satin kind of sheen. Then we've got Artist Pure. I've got a spool of that. So for everything that I've got a spool for, I'm thinking if anyone else wants to try any of these solders for themselves, I will make samples available, and I can even do a master sample set, of course for a fee, since I paid for a lot of these out of pocket. I think I paid over $400. I probably could have gotten some better deals, and I'm okay with that. I'm happy to use all the solders, even the ones I don't like. I can find a use for them. But if you are interested in trying any of these, just let me know, and I will be happy to get some samples together for you. So our next one here is the Canfield 50-50. I'm actually surprised I didn't already have some of this because I'm such a Canfield fan, but apparently I just had their 60-40 on hand. And that's okay. Thankfully, a fellow artist came to my rescue and sent me a nice little sample of it. I don't normally use a lot of 50-50 because I do mainly copper foil construction, and I like the 60-40. It's just a personal preference. And let's see, this one's CMP. Oh, this one's taped. Super clear tape. Pardon me while I get this all picked off of here. I have been taped to myself. It happens. Alright, so I'm actually gonna cut off that little bit with the tape residue on it because I don't want that to affect the solder. I don't know. Oh, this bends really easily. This might be a slightly thinner. This might be a slightly thinner solder. So, okay, this is CMP, and it's not a brand I'm familiar with. I found this one on Amazon, because if you can't find it on Amazon, you don't need it. I like shopping online. I found lots of amazing things on Amazon. And no, they are not paying me. So the CMP melted really nicely, and it's got a bit of a satin finish. Kind of like that. So Eagle, another fan favorite. This will be my second time using anything Eagle. Kind of excited about this. Ooh, that melts really nice. So Eagle, when I placed my order with Eagle, I called them. They're down in Texas. And the lady I'm terrible at remembering names, but the lady who helped me, super sweet, super nice, just very pleasant to do business with, and I would be more than happy to give them my business again in the future. They were just very accommodating and very sweet. This one is Glass Pro, and again, these are all 50/50 solders that I'm working with right now. So we'll see how this one goes. Maybe Glass Pro was the one that's at Hobby Lobby. I really don't remember. That was in February. That's a long time ago. That one melts and flows really nicely too, and I'm not seeing a lot of the black buildup on the soldering iron that some solders do. So that's really nice. So this one is Hot Max. This is another Amazon find. I had never heard of them until I started searching for stained glass solders on Amazon, and this is one of the ones that came up. So it's a little on the pastier side of liquid, but it's not terrible, and it flows pretty nicely. And it dries it doesn't dry, it sets up. It's got a fairly smooth finish, so that's good. And okay, now we're on to Mastercraft 50/50, and that's 50% tin, 50% lead. Ooh, this one stinks. Ooh, that actually has a really nasty odor to it. Be glad there's no smell-o-vision. This one has an uneven, partly shiny, partly satiny finish. Wow. Okay.
Odor, man. That odor.
I know. Wasn't that terrible? Whew. I don't even know how to explain the odor. It's not like it was, I don't know. It was bad. Chemically bad. Our next one is Studio Pro 50/50. Wow. I've never had a solder smell that bad. That's really lumpy. I'm going to try more flux and see if that smooths out, because that's really horrible. Okay, more flux. Almost always fixes the problem. If you're going lumpy, go for more flux. That almost always fixes it. Okay, so that one actually flowed pretty nice once I got a little bit more flux on there. And it sets up fairly even finish there too. And the last sample for 50/50 is VWM, Victory White Metal. And this is one of their stained glass solders. And I say that because I think in the 60/40, we have one that was, I have a 60/40 stained glass solder and a 60/40 wire solder. They may be exactly the same thing, but with different labels on them. I'm not certain, but I figured I'd give them both a try and see if they behave any differently. So that one flowed pretty nicely, but man, it's got an uneven finish. Shiny in some areas, satin in others. So, but that is our 50/50 group. A little uneven, so hopefully you'll be able to see some of the finishes there. Just looking at the shininess, it looks like Hot Max might be the shiniest of everybody, maybe Eagle. So, as far as shiny goes and even, Hot Max and Eagle might be our winners here, so that may or may not change once we get that cleaned up. So 60/40, this is our biggest sample group by far. So it might take me just a second to get these set up. Any questions so far from anyone out in the viewing field? No? That is cool. Alright, so get us fluxed here. So the part of the experiment that has me most excited is finding out if there is a sexier, shinier, smoother, nicer to work with solder than the Canfield 60/40 that I'm used to working with. I know that Canfield uses virgin metals, which doesn't necessarily mean they're more pure. A lot of companies use recycled metals, and depending on how they're recycled, they might be quite pure. So I'll just be interested to see if there is a cheaper alternative to the expensive, but so far very worth it Canfield solder that I've been using over the years. So our first 60/40 sample is going to be Amerway Sapphire. And we'll see how this melts. Melts pretty smooth. If I'd stopped touching the solder to the glass, I wouldn't be dragging it with me. So that gets a nice smooth bead, and it's fairly shiny. It's got a somewhat satin finish, but it's not overly pronounced. Then we've got Artist Pure. So let's see how this one does. What was the stinky one from before? Was that Studio Pro? I just want to be prepared for the 60/40 Studio Pro if that's the stinky one. I think it was. So Artist Pure flows pretty nicely. It melts nicely. And the finish is nearly identical to the Amerway Sapphire. And then we've got Avril, which is a donated sample. This is a 60/40 Avril. Again, not a brand that I was familiar with until I received a sample. That one melts pretty nice as well. Maybe got a little bit too much there. So yeah, that one flowed pretty nice, and so far all three of them look just about the same. That's really interesting. And okay, on to the Canfield. This is a roll I've already been using. So this is a Canfield 60/40. And I think on average this retails between $20 and $25 a pound, depending on where you get it. So that one, I'm really not seeing an appreciable difference, and actually that one's more satin finished on the surface than the first three. Okay, then we've got the Canfield Quik-Set. It says Instabead. So I'm guessing the time between heating and cooling is, or the time to set up is pretty fast, which means if that's the case, this would be a really good solder for decorative solder. And it does set up, it's a little bit lumpy, I didn't go back over it, because it does set up pretty quickly, but it's shinier than the regular Canfield 60/40. So I'm already a fan of that, because I like my solder shiny. Oh, this is another CMP, and it's got tape on it, so bear with me while I peel the tape off. And I'm going to cut off that end again, so none of that remaining adhesive contaminates the sample we're doing here. So CMP 60/40, this is another, I mean, it really unspools super easy. It bends really easily. I like that. I don't like to have to fight with my solder. Melts really nicely. And flows pretty nicely too. Let's see how it sets up. It's pretty smooth finish. Let's see, Eagle. Alright, all you Eagle fans, here it is. It's just, the spool is really shiny. I don't know if you guys can see that, but that's super shiny. So I am hopeful if the spool is that shiny that my line's going to be pretty shiny too. So let's see. It melts pretty nicely. It's pretty workable and sets up super smooth and consistent. I like that. I can't stand it when I'm working on a piece and the solder is super shiny in some places and kind of matte finish in other places. So that's really nice. I really like the Eagle. The Fry is our next one. Again, not a brand that I'm familiar with. I didn't find it when looking online, But I'll be honest, I didn't put all of my sleuthing hat on to find this. I'm pretty good at finding stuff on the internet. If it's there to be found, I can probably find it. So the fry flowed pretty nicely, and it's got a nice even finish. I needed a little bit more flux. It's a little lumpy on the end, so that's actually going to drive me nuts. Let me do that. Okay, that's a little bit better. And next is Glass Pro. Glass Pro 6040. This is another really shiny one on the spool. That might be a good indicator. Let's see if this one behaves like the Eagle did. Super shiny on the spool, also really shiny on the piece. Smooth that out because that was kind of ridiculous. Okay, now let's really smooth it out like we mean it this time. There we go. So that one's a bit more of a matte finish than the Eagle and Fry. Nice though, nice and consistent. Okay, our next one is Hot Max. So let's see how this one behaves. Flows pretty nice. Melts pretty nice. Okay, that's bananas. It's nice and shiny. This weird brand with the cheesy packaging that I thought, cheesy label, that I thought was going to be absolutely terrible. I judged it by its label, I'm not going to lie. It looks ridiculous. It looks like something, it's like it's for a hot rod or something, not for stained glass.
It does look kind of hot rodish.
Yeah.
It needs some pinstriping.
We'll get on that. Actually, it's got a little pinstriping.
Does it?
It does.
That's ridiculous. It's got flames on it too, doesn't it?
Yeah,
the
flames.
bottom, yeah.
Yeah.
It makes it go faster.
It's marketed for speed demons. Wait, oh, that's me.
You got a lead foot.
I do. Mastercraft is our next 6040. Let me get back on track so we're not wasting everybody's time here. So Mastercraft, next one. It's flowing really nice, melting really nice, but it's setting up unevenly and mostly sort of satiny matte. So I don't know how I feel about that one. That is a Victory White Metal. PK Metal Classique. This is another donation. Another brand that I'm not familiar with at all. I think I tried to do a search online, but I couldn't really find anything for PK Metal. But I don't... Ooh, that smells terrible also. Wow. It's like, I don't know that I could work with that. Oh. That was bad. Studio Pro. Okay, brace yourself. Because I think this is another stinky one.
Braced.
So PK Metal, aside from the smell, it's a little lumpy. But again, that could be me. But it's nice and shiny. That smell is just really unfortunate. It's just really unfortunate. So Studio Pro 6040 is our next one. Kind of don't want to inhale just in case it smells, but I gotta breathe. Okay. That flowed really nicely, and I didn't really inhale while I did that, so I don't know if it smelled or not. But it's pretty shiny finish too. And let's see, we've got the Victory White Metal Stained Glass 6040. This is what I've been buying recently. It's another American company, and I believe it's all virgin metals as well. They're out of Cleveland, Ohio, and I've been enjoying their solders about as much as Canfield. I did a side-by-side test for myself a few years ago. I need a little bit more flux here. A side-by-side test for myself a few years ago between Victory White Metal and Canfield, and as far as workability, I couldn't feel a difference, and the finish was equal. But I'm going to tell you right now, the finish on the Victory White Metal, just comparing to regular Canfield, much better. It's super consistent and nice and shiny. So I'm excited about that because Victory White Metal solders are significantly cheaper than Canfield. And as we all know, stained glass is not a cheap hobby or profession. It just keeps getting more expensive. So, oh, this is the wire solder. This has an interesting odor, but it behaves about the same as the stained glass solder, so I'm wondering if it's a fairly similar alloy, or maybe it is the same thing and it's just a different batch. Bless you. Oh, the smell. The smell got to Emily. So, okay, so that's all of our 60/40 solders. I know it's bending. It's probably making some of you squeal. So just on a quick glance, I'm thinking the Studio Pro Canfield Quik-Set is super even, super shiny. Eagle is very consistent. That was nice to work with. Fry was nice. There are a lot of these. The Hot Max, though, that might be the shiniest. Hot Max and PK Metal. I'm really interested in, I'll have to see if I can find some PK Metal to work with it a little bit more. So that's ready to get cleaned up. Now we'll do the 6337s. Almost done. So you may have noticed, I think it's in frame, there's a group of 5 tiles here, lead-free, 50/50, 60/40, and 6337. I figured once I get all of these cleaned up, what I will do is take the winners, and by winners I mean shiniest, smoothest finish, basically how it looks, because how it behaves not so much important as how it looks and how easy it is to get that look, because you shouldn't have to run over a solder seam several times to get a nice smooth finish, because that's just gonna, it takes too much time. Ain't nobody got time for that. So our 6337, I'm actually gonna have to reach in front of the frame here to get all of these guys over here, because I'm gonna pull them down here so I can get to them easily. And I will Mastercraft, oops, meant to do that, Studio Pro and Victory White Metal. So that's, actually let me see if that's blocking, nope, not blocking the view. Great.
I could have checked that for you.
Huh?
I could have checked.
Oh, shut your face. She's watching the live stream while we're doing it, so she could have told me whether or not I was being ridiculous, but that's okay.
Oh, you're always ridiculous.
So 6337, haven't used this at all either. I've pretty much only used before today 50/50 and 60/40. From what I understand, 6337 has a very narrow solid to liquid back to solid temperature range, which means it would be great for decorative soldering, because if you drop a little ball of solder in place, it should solidify fairly instantly and stay exactly where you put it instead of blopping all over the place, which is usually what happens when I try decorative soldering, or at least the decorative beads of solder. Balls, I don't know. Decorative, I don't know. Dots. I don't know what people call them. So that one, it does set up very quickly, so that's good. And it's pretty shiny. That was the Amerway Jubilee. And this one's the Amerway Topaz. Now this one, as you can see, the wire is very, very thin. And I think this is specifically done in mind for decorative solder. So this is going to be weird soldering with such a tiny little bit of solder. It's so wee, but it melts really nice. And this is crazy shiny. So let's see. Yeah, it's really easy to get a nice smooth bead out of that. But I kind of feel like I'd go through this whole spool in like 10 minutes. Even though it's still a pound of solder, it's just so tiny. Yeah, so that's really nice and shiny from what I'm seeing this angle. So our next 6337 is The Ultimate Solder by Canfield. And the label says it contains more than 62% tin. So it might not actually be 63%, but we'll give it to them. We'll give it to them. So that melts really nicely, flows really nicely, and does set up quick. I guess that quick setup's also good if you're soldering in an earthquake. Priorities, come on now.
I would think that would be the least of anybody's concern into an earthquake, but that's just me.
Oh, maybe. Maybe. I'm going to go over that one again because I really kind of botched that. So let's see if it sets up any better with a less shaky rendition. That's not terribly shiny. I mean, in comparison to the Amerway Topaz, the Canfield Ultimate is not nearly as shiny. This one is the Eagle 6337. That's 63% lead, 37%, or 63% tin, 37% lead. Ooh, that's got a terrible smell. What is that? Why do some of these smell? That's what I want to know. So that was really nice to work with, and that's got a really shiny finish too. It's set up fast, but not so fast that it's shaky, if that makes any sense. Like the line stays nice and smooth. And now we've got the Mastercraft 6337. Alright, that took a second to melt, and if you touch the, oh god, that smells. If you touch the wire solder to the foil, it sticks. Oh, that was unpleasant. And when it sets up, the finish is a bit uneven, a bit sort of shiny and satin in random places, it looks like. The Studio Pro is next, and the spool's nice and shiny, so I'm a little hopeful. And let's see how this one behaves. It's a little pasty. Doesn't really go, oh god, and it reeks. It's pasty and doesn't really get terribly liquidy. It probably would if you had a rheostat and cranked up the temperature on your iron. But as far as like having the consistent temperature, it does not get very liquidy, and the finish is kind of not a pretty satiny finish. It's not very shiny. So our last one here is the Victory White Metal 6337. We'll give this one a try, and then I'll go take our samples into the kitchen. We'll take a break and start a new live stream, 10 minutes max, once we get them cleaned up and dried off, because I want to get them nice and dry. And I'm also going to bring some cleaner into the studio because I'm going to do a swatch test of patinas. I've got black, pewter, and copper. So I'll just do a stripe down of each patina to see how they react. In theory, they should all be similar because it's a chemical reaction with the metals in the alloys. But we'll see. I mean, there might be something different. So the Victory White Metal flowed really nicely, and it's got a nice even finish. But looking at all of these, it looks like the shiniest of the bunch is the Amerway Topaz, and that was the super skinny wire solder. Next shiniest is probably going to be the Eagle. So I'm really impressed with Eagle. I can see why all of the folks who use Eagle and swear by it do swear by it. It's a really nice solder and definitely more economical than some of the more expensive ones, and they perform nicely. So we're going to take a break. I'm going to end this live stream, and I'm going to start a new live stream, like I said, in about 5 to 10 minutes, just however long it takes us to get these nice and clean and dry, and get some cleaner set up in here, and we'll pull the patinas out, and I will give them each a swatch test and then wipe them down with some cleaner so you guys can see the finishes once they get a little bit of patina. Alright, we will be back shortly.